Yo, what's going on, guys? Rhys here from More Than Lifting with the More Than Lifting podcast. Conversations about calisthenics, bodyweight training, gymnastics, all that good stuff. I'm Rhys, the personal trainer from the UK and founder of More Than Lifting, and in this episode we're going to be talking about low-level drills and conditioning, specifically what the difference is and what that looks like in terms of your training. Okay, I had a conversation with someone on Instagram the other day and we were talking about it, and I figured it'd be best just to explain to everyone, really, and talk to everyone about it. So before we get into that, I'm still injured and it sucks, but my injury's actually changed now, so I've got a different injury, which is an absolute nightmare. Training my hollow backs too much, and I've actually done my wrist in a little bit and my shoulder, so suffering a little bit, but hopefully I'll be back on track shortly and pushing for that hollow back again. My one arm is improving every day. I'm still doing this full inversion. I'm being very careful with it and what I'm doing and how much time I actually spend on it, but my one arm is improving a lot. Yesterday we were doing these different shapes. So this isn't something I do a lot, like with handstands. Like I just do a handstand, you know what I mean? It's just like straight. I haven't spent a lot of time like working transitions between variations and stuff, but up until recently, and it is great conditioning for your stability. Like it's just so good. So we were doing these shapes and stuff, and I didn't want to put too much weight on my right hand, so I thought, it's an excuse to kind of do some more one arm stuff. And and it's just amazing. I just love doing handstands, you know what I mean? Can't really go wrong with them. Learn to handstand fast, guys. You should learn to handstand. If you can't handstand yet, then why not try learn to handstand? In fact, you don't need to try and learn, you just learn. It's really that simple. It might take a while, but it's a nice little project you can have in your evenings when you don't fancy training. You can just do some handstands or something, or some conditioning or exercises or low level drills, which we'll be talking about in this episode. Yeah, so handstands are cool. I'm loving this inversion challenge. It's been really good fun and it's helped me a lot despite my injury, which is a pain in the ass. I'll be honest with you, injuries aren't cool, so don't get injured. Top tip from Rhys today, don't get injured. So today we're talking about conditioning exercises. So first off, what is conditioning? Okay, so here's some bad news. Everything is kind of conditioning because you're conditioning your body to a certain kind of adaptation, all right, a certain kind of development, whether it's mobility, whether it's strength, whether it's cardiovascular fitness. It's all conditioning, really, so that's kind of shit. But conditioning is basically just training. If you're training, you're conditioning your body in some way. It's a shit definition, sorry guys, but that's really what it is, all right? But we refer to exercises as conditioning exercises or low-level drills for different reasons, and there is a difference between the two as well. Conditioning exercises tend to be more specific for something. Yeah, so a conditioning exercise, you might have wrist conditioning exercises, things like a planche leans, or wrist mobility, like dynamic stretches and mobility work are also wrist conditioning exercises. Handstands could even be conditioning exercises for your wrists because it creates a lot of that forearm tension, but that's a bit advanced. Okay, more lower level things, like there's this one thing that one of my coaches at gymnastics made me do one day, and it looked rubbish, yeah, but it was the most brutal thing. And he basically had like a 5 kilo weight or like a 3 kilo weight tied to a bit of string, and on the other end of the string was like a little stick about space for your hands, and about 3 hands long, so there's enough for a hand space for the string to wrap up in between your hands as you basically just held it out at arm's length and twisted with your hands to do it up, to wind the string up and wind the weight up to the top. And then what you do when you get to the top is you just go back down again. And it sounds kind of rubbish. You think, that's not going to be too bad. Just trust me, try it. That is a brutal wrist conditioning exercise, a forearm and wrist grip strength conditioning exercise. So there you go, that's an example of conditioning. But as I said, or as I alluded to, there's a difference between low-level drills and conditioning exercises, like specific conditioning exercises, all right? And that is that low-level drills tend to be kind of all-rounders. Think like your hollow body stuff, think mountain climbers, burpees, stuff like that is like general kind of low-level drills. But even stuff like bridges, like they're kind of low level drills. Then you get more conditioning specific stuff, which is more specific to certain things, which would be stuff like a German hang. So that's a great conditioning exercise for levers and for shoulder mobility and grip strength and core and that really all of your trunk, because it's like a hanging leg raise with 180 degrees in it, an extra 180 degrees in there somewhere. And so it is a brutal exercise. You could do German hangs for reps, and that is going to just do naughty things for your levers, because you kind of go through a back lever and a front lever to an extent, and the more strict you are, if you're aware of those two things, and if say you're doing it on the rings, then you could do like a straight, try and keep your body as straight as you can and go from the German hang back round, or go from round lever straight up through the front into an inverted hang, and then round to the back lever into a German hang and back. That, oh mate, that'd be intense. I couldn't do that, but it'd be something worth training. I could probably do a negative of it, so maybe in the future you'll see me doing that. So German hangs, anyway, they're a great conditioning exercise, but they are very specific for certain skills and stuff. And that's why it's a conditioning exercise rather than like a low-level drill. I mean, it is actually a skill in itself, a German hang, but you can use it for training as a conditioning exercise for progressing other skills like your levers. All right. So next then is, how does skill conditioning work? All right, because I've said conditioning is more specific. It's usually, you can have stuff that's dedicated skill progressions, like I've spoken about previously in other episodes of the podcast, but I've also spoken about lots of like conditioning exercises. Like I've spoken about finishers as being like low-level drills and conditioning. I've spoken about having low-level drills and conditioning days in your program and actually using that as specific training time to work those low-level drills. All right, but that, when you have them as separate days, that tends to be more general kind of all-rounder stuff like low-level drills, unless you're in a specific skill cycle or working on a specific skill, and then maybe those days are more conditioning stuff. But the way I tend to do it is keep those separate, have your low-level drills as your low-level drills, and then have skill days in your skill cycle for this specific skill, progressions and conditioning exercises. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when I have a little breakdown of these kind of workouts. So next then is, how does it actually work? All right, so skills tend to be isometric exercises. So your isometrics and your progressions, your progression exercises then tend to be the isometric holds. All right, and you have the option of just training the isometrics, and just working down that progression, but you're going to progress a lot faster if you actually train in those parts and conditioning the exercise. So when you do specific skill conditioning, you're working that skill usually at a lower level and usually with some kind of dynamic movement. Yeah. Now, this isn't always the case, because your progression exercises, they are conditioning, because you're holding that position. You're literally training your body to be in that position, whether it's like an advanced tuck or it's like a straddle. And your posture obviously matters in this and everything like that. But really, where the true gains are with conditioning is your dynamic movements, okay? Because you're not just training in the position, but what you're doing is you're working all your muscles, okay? So it just multiplies those results, because it allows you not just to master a hold, but to master moving and holding at the same time. All right, this isn't always the case, because you don't always just do a dynamic variation of a skill for your conditioning. You can do things like German hang, which we've already spoken about, which aren't necessarily specific for any particular skill, but they help with loads of skills. All right, because everything uses your shoulders, really. Well, all the levers do anyway, because that's where the pivot point is. Okay, so when we're talking about isometrics, we're thinking like single leg L-sits. Yeah, single leg L-sit is like a progression for an L-sit, and it's an isometric exercise. It's a hold, all right? But a dynamic conditioning exercise might be something more like L-sit bicycle kicks, which is where you're switching legs basically. So you're in your single leg and you switch to the other leg and switch to the other leg and switch for reps. So you're going bam, 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 switching your left to right, okay? And it takes that exercise to a whole new level, and it will help build all the muscles that are working in that isometric. But because you're moving them, you're creating that movement under tension, all right, maintaining that position but still allowing for that movement to come in, and it obviously takes it to another level. But it also gives you the ability not just to do stuff for time, but do stuff for reps. Okay, and then that changes your ability, that changes how you can fit it into workouts. So now, if you've got reps of stuff, you can think, oh, that's a core exercise, I'm gonna do that between my pulls and my dips, because that then creates like a strength tricep using the foundation tricep kind of formula. Check out that podcast if you haven't for more information. But that means that you're hitting all three parts. Yeah, you got your push, your pull, and your isometric stuff, or a dynamic skill. It doesn't have to be isometric. In fact, I actually recommend it be dynamic, like a leg raise, for example, but L-sit bicycle kicks, fantastic. Okay, but then what you can also do, which I'm going to get into in a sec, is have a specific skill conditioning workout where you pick a skill, and then you work through different progressions that will on different types of variations, and you really spend your whole training time just programming that skill, okay, conditioning that skill, working it from different progressions, different skills, transitions, all this kind of stuff. Okay, and we'll get into that in a second, but first I'm going to show you a real life example of low level drills. So your low level drills workout, then let's just dive straight in. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 different exercises that are create this basic circuit you could do, or give you some ideas of low-level drills. We'll just dive in. I've got 5 exercises for you. The first one's wall walks, which is like a handstand conditioning exercise, but it's a great like low-level drill. You can do it for anything. It's not particularly advanced. You can start doing wall walks, and it'll help with loads and loads of stuff. All your core, your plank, your scapular stability, and all kinds of stuff. Oh, also being upside down. So yeah, it helps being upside down as well. So wall walks, then something like crow stands, jump squats. They're much more basic kind of exercise and not kind of calisthenics specific, I guess. That's not a calisthenics exercise. Jump squats are. I mean, they're a bodyweight exercise, and that's a great way to train your legs. Yeah, so jump squats, then you got like front bridge raises, so not just a front bridge, but a dynamic front bridge raise, so you do it for reps, bam, 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 and then flutter kicks as well, which is an obvious, really low level drill. Other things you might include would be like hollow body stuff, yeah, something like that, your planche lean maybe, you'd work that in, side bridges, planks, maybe some push-ups and even some rows and stuff, you know, just low-level stuff. Nothing too intense, nothing too crazy, all right? It's more really about working your whole body, so maybe you wouldn't do your pulls and your rows, you'd save that, your push-ups and your rows, you'd save that for your strength stuff, and instead you'd think more like mobility work and stuff like that. All right, so that's kind of what a low-level drills workout might look like. All right, then we move on to a skill conditioning workout. Okay, so for argument's sake, we're just going to work handstands. So as we know, when you're training your skills, you start with your hardest stuff first, because you always front load your training. So your skill conditioning workout might start with your handstands, looking something like one-arm handstand progressions, or try your one-arm handstand, do a bunch of them, both sides obviously, maintain that balance. All right, and then next you might start doing some like press variations. You might start doing some pike presses because they're harder, and then do straddle presses afterwards, and then you might try like other press variations or handstand with a negative press, or a negative press to L-sit. You might do L-sit presses up, I don't know. Be crazy. Okay, that's an L-sit press handstand is quite, I mean, it might not look too bad, and it's much easier coming down in the negative, but I mean, that's difficult enough. Try and get back up again. You need to really lean forward and get your bum as high as you possibly can. I can't do it very well, if at all. I need to be having a very good day to do an L-sit press up the handstand. Yeah, anyway, so then you might move on to something like handstand push-ups, like freestanding maybe. You might do some shrugs as well, or maybe wall-supported ones if you can't quite do them. Either way is good. It's more about actually conditioning your body while your body's upside down, doing the pushes, doing the reps, strengthening those arms and those shoulders and that back and core, and handstand push-ups, and you'll feel them everywhere. So then you might move on to like shoulder taps. You might do these up against the wall as well. I'd recommend it, just for argument's sake, just to be able to be stable and not worry about actually balancing in your handstand or having space or falling over anywhere. Just get up against a wall and then just shift your weight arm to arm, tap, 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 tap. Then you might move on to something more like static, like go back to lower level, like handstand variations. So you start doing regulars, or you start doing pike handstands, because they're probably the hardest. Maybe you do some hollow backs as well if you're not feeling delicate like me at the minute. Then you might do some straddle work, you might do some straight, you might do some tucks, some transitions between them. Like I said, something I haven't really been doing a lot previously, but something this full inversion challenge on Instagram has really opened my eyes to, is the power of it. All right, and it's helped me with my stability in crazy ways. It's only been like 10 days, you know what I mean? So just think of what it can do to you as well. All right, so that's that one. Then what else have we got? Then we start thinking, right, okay, we're getting towards the end of the workout now. We'll step it down again, and we'll go for something like bunny hops. A very low level drill we can do for reps. You know, you can just try and pause as long. You might end up doing a load of tuck handstands accidentally, but really it's about working that negative and really pausing at the top and holding tight and just really drilling all those muscles and getting a bit of the last bit of energy and muscle power that you have left, and really just rinsing it. Okay, so that's kind of what a conditioning workout would look like for a handstand, or maybe a one-arm handstand. It covers so many different handstand variations that is a very specific conditioning workout for handstands, working through all those. Okay, so you see, comparing the two, they're very, very different. Okay, there's no reason you can't do wall walks or crow stands or anything like that in your handstand workout, your skill conditioning workout, but you wouldn't put something like jump squats in, or you might, but you'd have it. That's the thing, because there's no hard and fast rule for it. But if you were specifically training your handstand on a skill day, when you're doing your handstand training, you don't really want to be doing jump squats. Yeah, you want to be just working your handstand. Why waste all that energy jumping around? Do that when you're doing strength training. Focus on everything. When you're doing a skills day, when you're doing a skill training, if you're in a skill cycle, this is going to come up for you. This kind of stuff is important to be able to go, right, I'm just going to work my front lever. I'm just going to work my back lever today, my flag, my handstand, anything like that, okay? So that's the difference. That's kind of how they work separately. Low-level drills tend to be more all-rounders, all right, whereas skill conditioning tends to be geared much more heavily towards a specific skill. There's no reason you can't do planche training and lever training together, yeah, in the same workout. You do different, you could do the same level conditioning exercises for both. So say you're doing advanced tuck front levers and advanced tuck planches, but really you want to just focus in on one and just do one, learn one, and then that will help you with the other one, no doubt. Absolutely it will. But really you should just focus on the one, get that done, and then move on to the next one in your next skill cycle. All right, guys, that is it for this episode. I have rambled on a little bit, I guess. It's funny because I haven't seen the time for this episode. Normally I see the time just ticking away and ticking away and ticking away. And yeah, it's been 19 minutes and I didn't even really notice. All right. Guys, as always, if you like what you've heard, give us a like, a subscribe, an honest 5-star rating and review, wink wink, and yeah, share it with your mates, training partners, anyone else who needs to learn about this kind of stuff. All right, spread the love and spread the gains. And if you want to talk, if you want to chat with me about anything, coaching, different programs, whatever, at Morgan Lifting everywhere, particularly on Instagram, hit me on the DM. Otherwise, look after yourselves, keep in touch with yourselves, and I'll catch you in the next couple of days for the next episode. All right, speak to you then.